Thanks for coming to the Call Takers workshop. Like I said, I'm here with Sally and Shannon. And I'm sure many of you have been call takers for a while. And we wanted to keep that in mind when we were going over this. But I hope there's something useful here for everybody, whether you're just looking into this for the first time or you've been doing it for a long time. All right. As Vincentians, we are always seeing the face of Christ and being the face of Christ. And that doesn't change when we're call takers. So we always kind of begin with that perspective in everything that we do as Vincentians. So we'll begin with a prayer. If you're on Zoom, my only ask is that we mute ourselves if we're on Zoom, just because that can sometimes get a little funky with if everyone's praying at the same time. Nick, are you doing something?
I was just zooming.
Okay.
It shouldn't make any difference, should it?
Shouldn't. All right. So if we want this side of the room to say the first part, this side of the room to say the second part, and we'll alternate. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Lord, today as I answer the calls from those who are facing crisis in their lives, grant me the grace to hear your voice in theirs and see your love in each person I speak to.
Grant me the
Patience to listen carefully to those in need, with an open mind, refraining from judgment. Grant me the time to record details correctly and to kindly pass information to those who can safely carry out the plan to help.
I offer my gratitude, Lord, that you make it possible for our community to serve your poor, and that I can be the voice of this ministry and witness of your great love.
Grant that I always carry in my heart the words of the Blessed Frederick Ozanam. What we do for the poor is not something we do for God. Our work is what we allow God to do through us. Amen. All right, and I'll turn this next part over to Sally and Shannon as soon as it loads.
Okay, well, it's loading up. Since most of you probably have been call takers, and even if you're new, we do have some ground rules that we all try to stick to. Whoops, and it's gone. One, of course, is to be pleasant, be open-minded, allow your neighbor to tell their story. And I think this is a big thing, because a lot of times people just want to talk. They really, really just need somebody to talk to, because they're usually in some kind of crisis. Empathize with them and use your best judgment, but don't be judgmental. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to not be judgmental when you get the same person calling with the same issues all the time. But for me, I just have to say a silent prayer and to myself and keep going. Work within the guidelines of the conference, and every conference is a little bit different about what they can do to help or what they can facilitate. And this is a big one, because I kind of struggled with this, I think, when I was first taking call, is that remember that your decision is the right one, because when you first start, you're a little bit unsure. You know, if it's not a clear-cut AES, I need $100 thing. If there's more involved, and sometimes it's a little scary, but you, after time, you really don't have much problem with that.
All right, confidentiality, private and confidential.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to assure that your neighbor that you will keep their information confidential. I've only been asked that by one neighbor, but it's so important to assure them that you are going to keep everything confidential. We need to respect their dignity for the poor and the core values of the society. Members of St. Vincent de Paul observe the utmost confidentiality in the provision of material and other types of support. And in this, I think it's really important as call takers. I take a lot of notes as a call taker. I don't put everything right in serveware right away because, I want to make sure I get the wording right, and I cut down a lot of things. So I have these notes, and you don't just want to throw them in the trash. Make sure you tear them up or shred them so that you are sure to keep it confidential. Sharing amongst Vincentians is allowable and can be very helpful. And what happens in the society stays in the society. And I know at our conference, we do share home visits at each meeting. We will talk about home visits, and sometimes we talk about our call taking, especially if we have something unusual happen, like maybe somebody has a very high rent. So we'll discuss it at the meeting and, decide what we should do to help the neighbor. So, but outside the meeting, we should never discuss it with our family or anything like that.
All right. Well, confidentiality is based on the individual's right to privacy, and it's a legal and ethical implication. Now, we can disclose to a Vincentian member in conference by an individual or family may be revealed to others only under specified conditions and solely for the purpose of providing help. Before we get to the question, I have a example. My husband and I also do home visits, and we had worked with this family. They had 10 children, and the mother was really working hard. The fathers weren't always present. And she said that she was a home health aide, and we had just delivered a bunch of stuff to her house, and the kids were just so cute. And we were walking around the block, and we saw her. And she was taking care of one of our neighbors' wives. And so she looked at us, and we just said hello, like we would anybody else. And my husband and I talked about that afterwards by saying, we've never really been faced with this kind of situation where, we certainly wouldn't say anything to the husband or any of the other neighbors. So it was just like, and she just said hi. She didn't say our names or anything like that. So it was obvious that she also wanted to keep things confidential. So what are the conditions for disclosing information outside of the Vincentian community? Does anybody have any idea or thoughts?
A certain amount we have to disclose because we're talking to AES or Centerpoint or landlord, and we have to disclose what we know about the case
Right.
to get it resolved.
So really, it's just as a necessity to meet the needs in the guidelines of our conference.
So let me ask, if I can, if people want to know, what do you do when you go to St. Vincent's, like a home visit or something? So I'm hoping that we can explain and teach them what we're doing. We don't give any names or anything.
Yeah, that's the important thing.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely no names, but we might say they have a high AES bill, or they have this, or some people will make a remark that we shouldn't be, you guys are just giving out handouts. You're just giving out.
Oh.
Then try to explain that in a way it's, you might be sharing a story, but there's no name attached to it or an address or anything else where they can identify the person,
So we've actually had a couple of cases recently where a third party has reached out to us for help with the neighbor. And particularly, I mean, that in itself is not terribly unusual, but in this case, it was because they needed translation services. So, we agreed to meet with the neighbor. So, for example, a couple of families at our school where they have a Spanish translator. So we met with them there. We dealt with the issue, as if we had met with them on our own at their home. Now, I guess I just assumed since the parent asked the school to reach out to us that was, informed consent. But I guess, thinking back on it, perhaps we should have just been a little more clear when we sat down to meet with them that, we appreciate that you've asked this third party to come in to facilitate the conversation, but just understand, even though that's happened, it's still all just confidential. But obviously, they're sharing their information in front of that third party. So, if anybody has any input on if there's a better way to do that, a proper way to do that.
I would probably have assumed the same thing. Max, you're doing some legal part of it or fraud or anything. I don't think there would be, I would say it was consent when they asked for help. Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would, especially since they reached out to the school to begin with, to be the intermediary. And we going on to the next slide, conditions for disclosing information. Maybe this helps shed a little bit of light on it.
Those of you on Zoom, can you see this slide?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So you would disclose the information only to those who can help with the situation. So that would be like, for instance, if you have a utility bill, you need to, of course, call the utility and first of all, ask if they will accept our payment, which most around here we know that they do. And then only with the neighbor's permission, I always tell the neighbor, I need to call the utility company, and I'll need your account number and information. Is that okay? And of course, they always say yes, but so then some outside organizations like mortgage companies, we've had to do several of those. We had an LP gas company we had to reach out to, so and the LP gas company, the one I had to reaching out to, they did want permission to disclose. That's the only time that's ever that I personally had that. And then some case managers need to share information. That happens, I know, a lot. I've had several case managers call. Yeah, this past month. So.
But the case managers will call for somebody else. So
right.
Exactly. Yes.
Right. I think that's similar to the case that Jennifer was mentioning earlier. And I've definitely heard from Vincent, it seems to be that when neighbors are reaching out, especially for help with rent, sometimes they're really reluctant to let their landlords know that they've asked for help. So that's just something that I know a lot of Vincentians are very intentional about, saying, well, we can help, but I am going to need to call your landlord. And sometimes the neighbor's been surprised by that, or so that's just something to keep in mind.
We do it with mortgages. We don't do mortgages anymore. You're just too hard. So we say, we can't help you with the mortgage, but if you can pay the mortgage, we can help with the utilities.
Right.
And we'll still provide the support, but then they can use the money to pay the mortgage. Because every time we try to work with a mortgage company, it's been like, they're impossible.
No, we just do rent. We don't do mortgage.
We've done
Rent's
several
not bad,
mortgages.
but mortgages are terrible.
Yeah, I believe you. Great. Information and record keeping.
Well, sure, where is your friend? Although sometimes you're like, now where is that information? But it really is great because if you get a call, actually, and I would assume that most people do that, and the person is not in the area and you have to refer them to another conference. I have found that when another conference puts in information, the basic information and maybe what their need was that they called, then I go in and I can copy that to mine when they call us, that it really makes things so much smoother to get that information. They have different processes and different data they consider essential. We don't always ask for well, I would say some people don't always ask for the household income. Now, if we have somebody and I will say, well, what do you get? How much are you getting a month? And why now are you having trouble? What has crept into the problem here that you can't pay the bills that you normally have been paying, especially when you say, well, they say, I've been here 2 years, but they've never called us. So, and then you start to find out they have car repairs or an ill child or they got laid off, and all that information is really important. And the number of family members I find important, especially if you're dealing with someone who has children and they're going to get disconnected from AES or CenterPoint Energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then think about why you collect the information that you do. I think it's just to facilitate and help, unless you guys have other ideas. I mean, for me, the more information I have, the better I can help.
Mm-hmm.
Builds a picture.
It builds a picture. That was a great way to say it.
Well, we don't normally let the home visitors ask all that information about household income and that kind of stuff. Call takers, do you guys? ask?
Yeah.
Oh, we do. I'm a call taker and a visitor, but as a call taker, we take that information.
I always start off with, what's the situation?
Yeah.
And
Oh, okay.
so I don't necessarily say what's your income or anything. I just
Okay.
say, what's the situation?
Sure.
And a lot of times it is just situational,
Right.
and they'll
Oh,
tell you what's
okay.
going on that they got behind and stuff. And it gives them a chance to tell their story too, then, it kind of opens it up. So
I like to find out what happened that got you in the situation that you need help
Right.
with AES.
right.
And then that gives, if we do have to assign a home visitor, then that gives them an idea what's going on before they get there. And, sometimes, well, I just have too many bills.
Mhm.
Well, okay, we all do, but, so it just kind of, like you said, paints a picture.
Yeah.
Okay, they just want the help. They're not forthcoming.
Right.
And, sometimes there is a lot more to it and they just don't want to say.
Was that Bill?
This is Bill Evans speaking. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
So
yes.
this, you know, uh, being in on this meeting, I may have some other uh, things to bring up, but I joined specifically, and I'll ask Emily and Jennifer to comment on this. But for me, I'm a call taker. I'm a home visitor. When I take a call, no matter what, and I think it's on our serverware. I don't know if Jennifer inserted that, if it's in everybody's serverware, but you call me and you say, I need help with utilities, with rent, with whatever. The only question I'm really interested in as a call taker, I'll say, ma'am, sir, nobody ever calls us unless they're in financial distress. You're a neighbor in need, and we'll see if we can help you. And the only question I have over the phone is, I want you to tell me just two things. What's your income and what's your rent in relation to income? I don't need, uh, Do you have this bill, that bill? Do you have storage locker fees, payday loans? I just want to know the ratio between your income and your rent, because to me, it gives you an idea of what we might see when we do a home visit. So, Jennifer, speak to it. Did you put that in our survey, that rent to income ratio?
Who's Jen?
Yes, I mean, I'm pretty sure it is a field that's already in there, and I just had to put it on the screen, or I'd have to go back and see if it was a custom field that I had to just create, but I'm pretty sure it's in there somewhere already, and I just had to say add it to the intake screen.
Okay. Yeah. So, like Bill's saying, a lot of conferences do things differently, and different roles for call takers. Some ask just a few initial questions, including your address, just making sure you're calling the right number, and some want to get to know the fuller story. And every conference does it differently, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. And that's kind of the nice thing about nights like this, where we can kind of hear different approaches. Anything that we want to say about serverware before we move on?
Just a sidebar, we went to a workshop up by Toledo area, and I asked everybody, how about server? How do you guys like server? A bunch of them do not have it.
Yeah.
A lot of it is more, from what that meeting, it's more unique to Dayton.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Well,
that.
it was serverware was created in Dayton, and and it is also really created mostly for Vincentians. So because just of the information it collects and whatnot. So we're yeah.
Didn't really, they don't use it.
Yeah.
I never knew
It's just a
that.
big good tool.
It is a great tool.
I really need to get on this. I don't think it went any further than that. I was shocked.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
We just use it around Dayton, I guess, more than anywhere.
Yeah, and it is used internationally, but yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. All right.
I actually had real quick a serveware thing.
Yes.
When it comes to paying rent, doesn't have to happen often, but I have had, more than one landlord, when I ask for a W-9, say, I already gave it to you. Well, you gave it to a different conference, and I'm so sorry, but I need to ask for it again. And now I'll take my part in this problem, because for a long time I was putting the landlords in there incorrectly. And now I have since realized if I do it the right way, anybody else that wants to see my W-9 that I've gotten can. And I noticed, a lot of other conferences I also think might be doing it the wrong way that I was doing it, because very few, they all seem to check the box that they've gotten a W-9, but I can't see it. So
and we'll talk about this when we're getting to fraud. And I love that you're leading the conversation in the right direction. But it's a process of, yes, you receive the W-9, and then there's a process of scanning the W-9, and then you have to upload the W-9 to the landlord. And only when you can see and view the EIN number that's on the W-9 form can you go ahead. So we'll get into that a little bit at the next part about fraud, but I appreciate you bringing up that question. All right, and community resources. Give things like food and other things that are available for our neighbors in the neighborhood. Just a shameless plug for our website. You can view our member website, and you can view our member website and see the resources that are available. You can also join our Filling Your Backpack events, which are coming up. We have one in about a month, and then we have another one in the fall.
Could I,
Yes.
mention what I brought? Because it kind of seems like a.
Yes, please. That'll be this would be a good time.
I actually, put together, and you may do this too, but I just thought I would share it just in case, because I just found out about it not too long ago. And that's starting a file folder I have one for my call taking at St. Luke and one for the Urban Outreach Center. And then I have a home visit one because I do home visits. But I have all the resources, all the information so that I'm not taking a call and thinking, oh, I need this and having to get up. It's right here at my hands, and it just makes it so handy.
Good idea.
We actually have a threefold sheet paper with all the phone
Everything.
numbers of all the organizations. So we.
Jim, what's
we
better
try
is just
to
putting
write
it
by
in
the
the
phone,
thing
so
for that much time.
if somebody needs that, yeah, it's right there.
Yeah,
And
like a
that's broken down
tripod.
by,
We have that too.
like utilities, food,
Mhm.
rent. So you don't even have to root through it. You get. straight
Right there at your
box.
fingertip.
And then we give that to the neighbors.
Okay. Thank you. Getting back to fraud. Again, it's an unfortunate but real part of work that we do. Part of the process of information collecting is to get a picture and to make sure that we're getting a picture that's accurate and that we're being good stewards of the money that we have collected. I see a few people have joined the meeting. Thank you. So talking about process of fraud, we want to make sure again that we're being good stewards because we want people to continue to donate to us. And if people feel like we're not being good stewards of the community resources, maybe they'll stop donating to us, which would be sad. So Serveware is very helpful, I think, with keeping people, giving a good overview of who has called which conference, how frequently they are calling which conference. Another thing that people can typically find is they might be using the same different name, but they're using the same phone number. So we've had times in the past where you realize, oh, we've checked Serveware and this phone number has reached out to, 20 conferences, all using a name that's a little different, sometimes a repeating name. So again, Serveware is definitely your friend with making sure that we're being good stewards of our resources as Vincentians.
Just to mention one thing, that we've had this happen where there's a mother-daughter, or mostly mother-daughter, and they live together, but they don't have the same last name, and they each have a phone.
Oh.
And then they take turns, calling. And after you do your questioning about the address, you say, oh, you might just, if you're really looking at it, sometimes it takes a while. And then in that one section on Serveware where you can put like an exclamation point, we put Barbara is the mother of so-and-so. Be careful, because then we find ourselves, which we have a limit of how often we can assist a person, that they will do that. So,
and similar to this, and also maybe even more of a gray area, are the group homes that we know are in Dayton, where one resident of group home will call your conference and say, oh, I need a Kroger card or a RTA card, and then suddenly, well, you have 8 people calling from that same address. And so again, Serveware is really helpful with, okay, I can at least identify that that's a group home, and our conference can come to our agreement with how frequently you're going to help that group home or what our approach is going to be. But again, it's just helpful for record keeping. You mentioned that you can flag or address, you can flag a neighbor. That doesn't bar you from serving that neighbor. It just, again, helps with more information. So again, preventing fraud is verifying ownership of the property via the county auditor's website. If someone's giving you an address, it's always helpful. You can look it up. This is a free resource on the county auditor's website. It lets you know, A, that home exists, because sometimes some people have been so brazen to request rent for a cornfield or for a parking lot. And but then you can also say, okay, it exists. That's a great first step. Now let's check and make sure that the person that the county auditor says owns that property is the person whose name is on the W-9. So when we're collecting the W-9, that's one of the most important things that we're checking and making sure that aligns. It's not somebody's kind of made up business. If you're paying a property manager of a corporation-owned property, request property management agreement. Again, it's just making sure that things aren't being lost in a middleman or someone who says that they're representing, fill in the blank large property. And I think the next part that answers, I think Jennifer's question is coming up. Or if it doesn't, again, Jennifer mentioned that she was running into the same problem where she was asking for the W-9s of landlords that had already given the W-9s, but given them to a different conference. And a lot of landlords don't understand that. Well, okay, well, that was St. Mary's conference. Now we're St. Anthony's and we're asking for W-9. So typically that can cause some frustration. There is a feature in Servware where if a conference has received the copy of the W-9, downloaded it, and uploaded it to Servware using the features that are available, you can go in and see that the W-9 has been received. The next step of that, and I can repeat myself if I'm not making a whole lot of sense, but the next step of that is checking the district landlord's page. You go to copy landlord information. Once you copy the landlord information, it will ask if you want to copy the files along with it. Then it will appear as a landlord who is available, who is in your conference, and you can view the W-9 file. But the number one way to check and make sure that's worked is if you can physically open the W-9 file and check all the information, including the EIN number, is there. So as long as you can open the file and see the EIN number, you're golden. You don't need to ask for it again. You might want to talk with them and make sure that the information hasn't changed. But does that answer your question? Some of the conferences, I do notice don't upload the W-9 form. They might just receive it and click, okay, well, I've seen it, but I don't need to upload it to the district landlord's page.
Isn't it like every 3 years you have to get a new one? It's every so many years. I think is it 3?
Yeah, that might be true.
Yeah,
I don't know the
okay.
exact number, but I do know sometimes you can see on Servware a conference can click that they've received it, but they haven't uploaded it. So that's all I have to say about that. Did I miss anything?
If we've had a W-9, how old can it be before we need to get a new one?
3 years.
I think it's 3 years.
Yeah.
I have a question on the phone number business because that happened today.
Okay.
I put the phone number in and it came up as it was somebody else. So to investigate, I asked who all lives with you, and she said just my autistic son. So this person was on one side of town and this person was on the other. So it's already in the alert that somebody else's name and their address is, the phone numbers are the same. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that was
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Yeah, that's interesting. And a lot of our neighbors, they change phone numbers because they're buying
Yearly.
cell phones with prepaid minutes or data.
I get calls for Jennifer or somebody all the time on my phone because it used to be her number.
Oh,
I got her mom one time called me. So it does happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say, definitely not, but it can be something to look into further. Any other questions before we continue?
Yeah, this is Judy. I just had one quick comment is that not everyone will have an EIN number. There are legitimate landlords out there who are private property owners and will fill out their social security number on there.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
even still, when that happens, we're trying to get everything uploaded in there. So, they are concerned. I've had some landlords express concern about sharing their social security number. And I tell them that, we don't print them out. We do put them out there on our secure website, and they didn't seem to have a problem with it.
Yep. That's a good point to mention too. Yeah. Yeah. It just because that can be another reason why people are reluctant, not just that they're looking to commit fraud, but just because they don't want their social security out there already more than it is. Yeah. We talked about how we can look up phone numbers in Serveware. The red alerts that can appear if you have entered in an address that has already been entered into Serveware in the past. If you suspect they don't really live there, the place doesn't exist, check the county auditor's website. And this is why home visits can also be a big help in preventing fraud. If someone's not wanting to meet you at the door, if they're constantly wanting to meet you at a McDonald's or somewhere else, then, that can be an indicator, right? If you're always requesting Kroger cards, but you need to meet at a different location, that's definitely something that can raise a red flag and probably should. It's gonna let me continue. All right, this is the fun part that we've been looking forward to. These are some case studies, and we can just have a little conversation about some different scenarios. Some of these might sound familiar as Vincentians. I'm sure you've encountered similar situations before, but we're just really looking forward to hearing what your approaches might be. So I'll begin with this one. The Jones family is made up of mom, dad, and 3 young children. Mom and dad both work at minimum wage jobs, but they never seem to keep the same jobs for very long. They want a house in the neighborhood. They rent a house in the neighborhood. They have been calling your conference every few months for 8 years. You feel like whatever you give them is just putting a Band-Aid on their issues. It appears to you that the help that your conference gives them is just part of their budget. You know that you only help once every 4 months, and they call you faithfully every 4 months. What do? This is called the long time neighbor. So I'll begin with our friends on Zoom. Do we have any insights or thoughts about frequent flyer neighbors, longtime neighbors, familiar faces?
Well, I'll start. Let me get my face on there. Yeah. So, I think Jennifer will remember this. A lady that we had helped. We went back 10 years in Serveware at Our Lady of the Rosary, and we had helped them quite a few times over the period of a decade. The lady's husband passed, and that changed the dynamic. And you know, she did have some different needs, and we continued to assist her. And I'm asking Jennifer if she remembers this. And then we finally reached a point where we said, we have given you some direction. We've offered to sit down and maybe get some other partners involved, but it's really time that our regular and continued assistance come to an end. And she was very angry, very angry. Jennifer, you remember that or not? Maybe not. But anyway, I just think that sometimes you have to say, and this is me, and maybe somebody would comment, the resources we have to spread them around a little bit. And I think it's a disservice to, you know, serving the same people for a decade. That's my own personal opinion about long time neighbors. Any comments?
Yes, I mean, I do know who you're talking about, and I would say those are, well, those are relatively rare, where it's really just always, 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 um, we go back and forth trying to implement well, we can never implement a hard and fast rule, but we try to say, if we've helped you 3 times in the past, then we're probably only going to help you once a year. And again, everything has to be case by case. So, we might have to limit it to, have we helped you in the last 12 months? And unless it's, again, a just totally new circumstance where, it was unforeseen and you're asking for something different than you've asked for before. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're lucky that we don't have anybody that just consistently calls us for the same thing over and over. And we also, again, we don't have any hard and fast rules of we'll help you every X number of months, or because I mean, I could see how that would invite that small proportion of the population to abuse that. If they know it's every 4 months, then there are some people that will call every 4 months. So, I mean, this person that was very angry and, explained to me why you helped me before and I'm not going to help you now. Don't you help every so many months? No, that is not true. We do not have anything written down or verbally agreed upon in our conference that we will help every X number of months, or, so it's defensible to say, no, I'm sorry, that is not true. And just because it's been 4 months since we helped you does not mean we can help you again.
Yeah. Any comments?
I'm from Incarnation, and we are really lucky that we have really great donations, and we have this conversation all the time about, we call them the frequent flyers. We help every other month, but we have 6 month and 1 year limits. So our feeling is as long as they're in those parameters and we have the means, we help them. But this is an ongoing conversation in our conference about these frequent flyers who use us as part of their budget. So again, we're lucky we can do that, but that's what our approach is.
This is just a little bit different, but because St. Paul's has a food pantry and they can have people come once a month to get food, there are like, I think my husband has 6 now that are unable to drive and don't have transportation. So sometimes I help him, but usually he's the one that goes. And so over the last couple years, I mean, he's doing it probably longer than that, but he's noticed, the one neighbor has been there for a long time, but she often has then somebody visiting her who has a car. And he finally said, we have been very, we love to help you, but there are other people and I can only carry so many things in my car for so many people. And I've noticed that that you have a frequent visitor that has a car, or maybe you have a grandchild or somebody that could help you. Do you think it's possible that you could find somebody to come and pick up the food so that I can then open my car to another person who is on the list that would love to have it, since we've been doing this for 2 years? And really, he's had a great response. People are very good about, oh yeah, I think I can do that. But sometimes if you don't present another option or tell them exactly what you're dealing with, for people that are calling, well, our budget's limited, and we've loved to have been able to help you over this time, but we just can't help that much all the time anymore. So
I've seen some cases where just with the first presentation with the 3 kids and the 2 people that are working low income jobs. A lot of things have to go into the picture as not so much how much education they have, but do they have ADHD or something else that they cannot move up any higher? And you get a tire that needs to be replaced, and good grief, it's expensive. If the car stops running or the gas tank is got a hole in it and want you to meet you at the gas tank to get it filled up, and no, I'm not filling it up, you got a hole. It's all those little things, and I know that there's been at least one or two over the last 10 years that I feel like we have sustained them, but different people have gone to talk to her, and my heart goes out to her because she's busting her britches to go to work and take care of a 12-year-old that's getting in trouble all the time, and her husband's real sick. So it just depends on
The situation.
a lot of those frequent flyers are that way. The mentality level is low, or mental illness, or something else.
True.
Cooking
I
in there
agree.
with it.
All right. Thank you. Good discussion. The next one. I said the next one.
You gotta really want it.
I know. I think it only really likes it when I click that button. Sally, could you read the next one?
Sure. This is too much to handle, the heartbreaker. Rich is a Vietnam veteran living in your service area. He has PTSD and is unable to work consistently. He lives in a studio apartment, but he is now calling saying that he hasn't paid his PIP payment for 5 months. He is in default and now owes $1,200 to Centerpoint Energy in order for him to get back on PIP. What's more, he tells you that he is sleeping on the floor, he has no food, and he has received a 3-day eviction notice from his landlord. While he is speaking with you, he breaks down in tears and says that he feels like his life is ruined. What do you do?
That's called
Right. Well, I agree with you. I'm sorry, I forget your name.
Donna.
Donna said it's a mental health call. Anybody else?
We actually had one like this, and he was seeing a therapist. It wasn't doing any good. We actually encouraged him to get into some groups, at different churches. But he did try, but he felt like they weren't speaking to him. They ignored him. It's when there's mental health issues, it's very hard to make suggestions. But in our situation too, in something like this, we would probably, where it says he doesn't have a bed, he's sleeping on the floor, we get on Amazon and we will order an air mattress for them to be delivered to their home while we're searching for a bed, because it usually beds are in demand and it's hard to find them.
But he's going to be evicted.
Well, we would also we would talk to the landlord, because it says a 3-day.
Your eviction notice is a lot more important than money you owe to Centerpoint.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
if you're thrown out, you don't have to pay it anyway.
Right. And in this situation, we would have to talk to the landlord too, to see, it's 3-day eviction notice, so it's been going on. Will the landlord even accept your payment?
Right. That's true.
Yeah. So that would be the number one thing. Right. Exactly.
I keep on coming back to the title of this, which is, too much to handle, the heartbreaker, right? We have really deep resources and really deep toolkits to kind of use and help our neighbors. Some people are really good at this. I'm not particularly good at this, of, what to say, like what your first response is, rather than, before we get to all the ways to help, how do we kind of respond with empathy and let people know that, we're calling them because we want to be the face of Christ to them. How do we kind of start the conversation with that?
Start with a prayer. You ask them if they want to pray, because I have only had one person ever say that they didn't want to pray, but would you pray for me? And So then you just pray out loud so that at least they're part of it.
Yeah.
But that, I think if you start with a prayer with them, when you don't know what to say, it really helps to change the dynamic of what's going through your head.
He's a veteran. There are a lot of services available for veterans,
including St. Vincent de Paul.
including St. Vincent de Paul's Veteran Services.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would work.
That was where I would go.
I would try to get him, find out what we can,
Supportive services for veterans family.
do a home visit,
I didn't know
but
that.
get him hooked up with Veteran Services. They have more assets, particularly to handle the PTSD part. They work with that all the time. In this case, maybe
Well, I haven't done
St.
that.
Vincent
It's
shouldn't be the first
Okay.
port of call. The Veteran Services, they still need help from back does. Again, you try and do the best for these people, and if the Veteran Services can do better than we can,
Right.
that's where you should send them.
Actually, we've got a call. I had a call yesterday and he called back today. And he's a veteran. He was at the VA, Dayton VA called us. And I referred him to St. Vincent Veteran Services. And he said he had an appointment Tuesday with Montgomery County VA for his utilities. And he called today. He said he didn't make any calls. I was like, we gotta call St. Vincent
Yeah.
Veterans. We had a tenant and he got several months rent paid through the
Oh,
VA
wow.
and St. Vincent's. He got like 5 months rent paid.
Wow.
So a shameless plug for our most recent Filling Your Backpack Community Resources Night. I think we sent the video out via Flock Notes, right? So if you check your conference notes, the most recent one that has a video that includes a presentation from Katie Lewis, who is the director of SSVF, which is Supportive Services for Veterans Families, which is connected with St. Vincent de Paul, but gets its own funding from government grants and elsewhere as well. So that's another good resource if you're looking for one. Just check conference notes and you can see the whole presentation. It's pretty cool what they do. All right, and I have another reader. Want to go for it?
I'll go for it.
You go for it. All right.
What's the real story here? Joellen is an older woman who calls your conference every few months for food assistance. She gives you a different number of people living in the household every time she calls, and she changes her story about who is living with her frequently. She lives in a building that is all one-bedroom apartments. You feel like she's not being truthful with you and is just trying to get a larger amount of food. When you ask her frankly how she fits many people into her small apartment, she becomes evasive and refuses to answer. What do you do?
We had that exact scenario. She said her grandkids lived with her. So we asked to see their birth certificates.
Oh.
She showed us a few, but it was a 1-bedroom apartment. And she had like 3 or 4 grandkids sometimes and her kids. And she did show us a few birth certificates, but
I think that's again happened to my husband and myself. All of a sudden there were 8 kids and, and it was just a 2-bedroom place. And finally I said, well, okay, can I please have the names, the ages, and their social security numbers? And the last 4 of their social. And all of a sudden, well, 2 of them are leaving, and the next month they were down to just 3 people in the apartment. So I presented, we got this new rule. We really do need to know the names of the people that are living in the house, their birth dates, and the last 4 of the social. Could you just give us that, please? And then we've got everything we need and we'll be glad to assist you. So it's not confrontational. it's like, this is now what we're doing, especially if we're providing food or any kind of service. So if you could help us out and give us that information. And it's amazing how things kind of change.
Yeah.
When I read this, I just felt compassion for that woman. I just feel like she needs a home visit, and I feel like she needs somebody to talk to her, just to talk and let her know she's going to be okay. I just feel like maybe part of it is too that she just feels like maybe she doesn't have enough food and she's trying to, maybe hoard it a little bit. Maybe I just think she needs somebody to talk to too. I mean, we just never know the situation, with what's going on with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the point about the home visit is a very good one.
That's one advantage of St. Helens is we deliver first.
You do.
So
Yeah.
we
see.
do a home visit automatically if they want food.
Mhm.
And a home visitor is the same guy does food all the time. So he knows what to look for, what questions to ask. And
It's great.
when he goes back into the, we should do this again, and we don't do it again.
Exactly.
All right.
But the problem is, because we do
Be-
deliver.
Before we move on, I got to inject one little bit of St. Vincent humor here, very short. We did a home visit many years ago. I was a father with 6 children, and we did our home visit, but we didn't see I didn't see any toys. I didn't see anything around. And I said, gee, where the kids, I don't see any evidence that children live here. He said, well,
No.
they're well,
Okay.
they're
Did
well
you have?
behaved.
I
And
was
he
gonna
said, we make them pick up at night. And that's fine. And then the second time we visited, I said, I want to really see the children. There was nobody home. And he said, we're up the street and we're heading your way. And here comes 6 kids, honest to God. And then I didn't see the dad. And I said to the kid, I said, where's your dad? Um, and he said, oh, that's not our dad. He just told us to head down to the house. He gave us all something. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, you got to be careful. But yeah, there's a little humor for you. Next.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Judy, thanks.
I was gonna say the bad thing with us delivering the food is some people just want us to deliver the food like a Uber Lyft.
Mhm.
And that's the only reason they call.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
want the free Uber Lyft.
Yeah. Pat, could you read the next scenario?
Sure. Crisis. Myrtle, a longtime client, calls you distraught. Her son has overdosed on drugs. She's about to be evicted, and she's fighting with her live-in boyfriend. She says she's considering suicide. What do you do? That sounds like a pretty good time for prayer. I'd be praying big time internally before I say anything to her.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
And I heard another just
wellness check.
Yeah.
But that's not always the best.
Well,
It depends on who you get. Some are compassionate and some aren't, like they want to live like this.
no, I think I might talk with her a little bit, but I would be sure to give her the suicide prevention number and say, would you like me to call that number for you so that they can call you back and speak with you? Or I'll stay, if you have a phone that you can merge calls, we'll just go ahead and call together. And then you'll have support in what you tell them. But, not all of them have those kind of phones. So it doesn't always work. But I have called for a wellness check before.
I called the mental health thing, but it was when they were going through a transition and it was up in Columbus and she really couldn't help me down here.
Oh.
So the police did a wellness check and I think they told her to use her resources.
And that's kind of sometimes as I do.
Yeah.
And if she's dealing with fighting with her live-in boyfriend, there's some domestic violence stuff going on there too.
That's true.
Mhm.
Do you need
That's-
shelter?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are you safe right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Special request. A neighbor you have helped for years calls and tells you that she has been offered a job that has good pay and will help her greatly in the long term, but that she can't afford transportation to get her until she gets her first check. Your conference has recently voted not to assist with transportation costs. What do you do?
Bring it to the conference is a special case.
I would get on the phone to the president.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, what can we do?
Now, would you verify, just questioning, would you verify that she has this job? Or would you just not? I mean, I don't know. I would call my president, like you would say, and say, okay, can we do something here? Should we make an exception? That part, but in reading it again, yeah, since she calls a lot, and you know, maybe you know this neighbor really well, and you know that she's probably on the up and up, or maybe you might want to see where's this job. Like we've had a person who had a job or something in Springfield or Columbus, you know. Actually, we had a man who was getting chemo and stuff and had to go to Columbus and couldn't afford to go. But he offered to give information from his doctor that confirmed that he was going. So nobody had to ask. So I don't know. Would you feel like you'd have to do that, or would you, or just situational?
You might have a notification. You can ask if they have any like paperwork that they've received the job offer.
Yeah.
That might be the only thing I could think of, but that's not true with definitely all jobs.
So a bus pass is not a terrible expenditure,
No, it's not.
It's good perspective.
but it would be a one-time.
But you know, she's not going to get them for till our first paycheck.
Yeah,
She's
so
not
it
going to
might
get
be.
one for 2 weeks. Maybe she needs.
The bus pass is 30 days.
But
Yeah.
Springfield or Columbus, that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We can't. It's not-
If you live in Beaver Creek, good luck finding a bus.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of.
That's not, well, that's not, no.
Yeah,
Our conference has lots of buses.
I'm envious.
Hey. Then here's a familiar one. You helped him. A new neighbor calls you and says that he heard about you from a neighbor in his building. The person he mentions is a special case, and your conference really went above and beyond to help him, even exceeding your usual limits. When you tell the new neighbor that you can only help him with a limited amount, he becomes irate and shouts, "Well, you helped him more than that. That's not fair." What do you do?
I've had that happen to me before. I just explained that they were based on donations and that sometimes we have more donations than other times. And so we help what we can when we can. And I've always had everybody then turn around and be very understanding and no problem after that. Simply explain it.
All right. Okay. Do I have a volunteer to read the next one?
I will.
Thank you.
Out of area. You receive a call from Sarah, a single mom with 2 small children who lives outside of your area. She has been calling the conference in her area for days, but no one has returned her call. What do you do? I would call her conference and say, "Hi, this is Judy. You think you could call Sarah back? She sounds like she really needs help."
That's what I
And
do.
I've done that before, and sometimes they'll say, we had 12 calls in the last 2 hours, you know, and which is understandable. And I'll say, do you want me to call Sarah and assure her that you will be calling her soon? You know,
Yeah. And I think that they like that affirmation. I've talked to them, they're just really busy and they know you really need help. They're gonna call you back. At least they feel a little bit of
somebody
comfort.
heard them.
Yeah.
We've gotten a call from, I think, you guys, and saying that somebody had been calling us and we haven't been returning their call. And when we looked in serveware, there was no call in serveware from that person.
Oh.
Yeah.
Calling somebody.
Yeah.
All right. This is just so thank you for participating and just sharing your different thoughts. That's one of my favorite parts of these is that we get to have these cool conversations. As we're wrapping up, just a couple things to keep in mind is many of our neighbors are experiencing what is known as the tyranny of the moment, the urgency of the moment, right? And we are often kind of sometimes taken aback because they'll be calling, they'll say the water has been shut off, the rent is due, and I've received my eviction notice, and you can say, well, why didn't you call me when this was a smaller issue 3 weeks ago? And that's just because, you know, it's so important to come back to this concept. And for a lot of us, it is a concept because our life is pretty stable. And we can have these little hurdles that kind of come up and we can resolve them. But many of our neighbors, they are experiencing just one crisis after another. Yesterday was the fact that the car wouldn't start and the kid was sick and they needed to go to the ER. And today it's the rent and tomorrow it's going to be the water. And the next day it's going to be their daughter who was in an accident. Like it's one after the other. And it's a really painful place to be in. I'm going to do another shameless plug for something we have coming up. It is the poverty simulation. So please look on conference notes. It's a very cool experience where you get to kind of immerse yourself in what we call the urgency of the moment, the tyranny of the moment, where you get to just live your life a little bit in the shoes of our neighbors. And so you might have a court appearance. So you got to go to the table that has the court appearance, and then you have to go to the emergency room, and then you have to go check in with your parole officer, and then you have to go get a job, and then so it's one thing after another, and it's interesting juggling everything that they're experiencing. So I can't talk up that enough, but it's an important concept to keep in mind as we're being call takers.
Another thing to think about is many of the people we work with are low income, low education. They don't know how to budget. And they're only thinking about the day. So it's the shut-off notice that gets their attention. The bill, they don't even look at.
I was gonna say that.
So many other times,
True.
you know, it's,
They don't see the due date.
they don't see the due date, they see the shut-off date. And when it gets close to the shut-off date, that's when they call us. So a lot of them are crisis. You know, and you have to you have to work with them as best you can.
That's a good point. Thank you. Anything else to add up to about the urgency of the moment before we wrap up? All right. So we'll close with this quote by Catherine McCulley. We've talked a lot about fraud prevention, and whatnot tonight. Nick and Bill, I think you were at this conference where we were both at, and there was this guy. He said, I think the question was, how'd you get into St. Vincent de Paul? And he said, well, I got into St. Vincent de Paul because my parish had a food pantry, and I wanted to get in there and make sure that all the people that were ripping us off weren't ripping us off anymore. He said, and then I learned that there was some more nuance to this. And these people are coming from all different walks of life and all these different situations. And I really grew in my understanding. So it's a tension that we walk, right? Where both things can be true. And so I want to close with this quote by Catherine Macaulay. It is better to relieve 100 imposters than to suffer one truly deserving person to be sent away empty. Any questions for from either our friends on Zoom or our friends in person?
One thing we found, and we spoke about this in a conference meeting, is how often do you get the full story? If you get part of the story, so often there's other things going on that they just don't tell you about, and they don't want to tell you about. And you have to just assume, what they're telling you, is real and it's what's happening. Unless there's some glaring reason to tell you this isn't true and it can't be true. And you help them as best you can.
It's like when they ask you, why do you do a home visit? And if you give them a good story, then they understand why. Like you tell them, well, there's been a time when I went in and all they wanted was an electric bill paid, and you go in and there's no furniture, and there's kids running around that don't look like they have very much clothing and stuff. And I said, then we can reach out to other avenues and find more ways to help them. So I said, that's why we do our home visits. And then like, oh, okay. Like they didn't know if we were coming to report them to somebody or,
Criticize their housekeeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually had that happen with a neighbor who was seeking help for her children. She told me that the children were sleeping on mattresses on floors. And she said, "You're not going to report me, are you?" And well, of course, no, we're not going to report you. We're here to help you. What can we do to help you? Let us come and talk to you. And at that time, we were still participating with Hannah's. It would have been a wonderful opportunity. She called the next day and canceled it. And I think it was because she was afraid we were going to report her. No amount of assurance from us could sway that,
Well, I think that'd be finding her whatever she asked for then. No home visit.
I have a comment on when we talked about serving people who call us all the time for the same thing. Sometimes we just need to look at the history before we call them back. And that's what I love on Servware is, you've got it all right there. You know what you've done for them, what they've said, what's been going on in their lives. And we recently had a person who has called us a lot, especially for his water bill. And so I was taking care of that again. And when I called him back to let him know what I paid, give him the confirmation number, I also said, a few months back, you were saying that you had just gotten out of the hospital with prostate cancer. Any of you who were just at the last district council meeting, I shared some of this there, but I asked him, I said, so how are you doing? How's it going with that? And I was thinking he's going to say, oh yeah, everything's going fine. He said, it's not good. The doctor says maybe a few months. He's got me on medication, but it's not good. And like I say, this is somebody I've talked to often because I've paid his water bill often. But this time we really talked. And if you've seen today's Frederick 5 in your email, the letter there is talking about friendship and reaching out. And, so I just felt like this was the opportunity to reach out to him, to talk to him, and to pray with him, and to, tell him that we would keep praying for him. And it just made me realize that, yeah, sometimes you want to kind of monitor how much you do for somebody, but it is important to keep track of what's going on in their lives and just be there for them. Sometimes that's what they need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's wonderful.
Oh, and the best part of it was he said, but it's okay because I'm going to be with God. That's where he went with that. You know, he was very sincere. You know, he goes to church and he knew he was going to be with God. So even though this was tough and hard to handle, he knew where he was going.
Awesome. Thank you, Pat. Any other questions or comments before we wrap up? It's about 10:26. 7:26.
Let's say it's going to start raining at 10.
I said about. It wasn't exact. All right. It's 7:26. Any other questions before we wrap up? All right. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us in person. I really enjoyed tonight's conversation, and I think we got to share a lot of great information between some great and experienced people. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Helen, for hosting us. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Not just saying Helen, but you guys as well.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I've never been to St. Helen, so.
I want to look at your,
Everybody.
Thank you.
How to do it.
It was a